I really hope Andy Elliott or some other sales gurus don't see this, because I really have a feeling that it's probably going to piss them off quite a bit. So if you've been in sales for longer than about 5 minutes, you've probably heard the saying, people buy with emotion and justify with logic. Now, this is something that is true. I can't dispute that. I think it's very true. But I think the problem is we're teaching this in real estate to new agents. And I think that causes a couple problems. First of all, the traditional teaching of this method really leans into emotion to get the yes and then rationalize it later with your clients. But there's a few big issues that I have with this. And first of all is what we're seeing right now. We have a lot of these sales trainers or real estate coaches that are using this, and they're basically teaching new real estate agents how to manipulate their clients into getting the yes. Now, the problem with this is if you're using emotion like this, it's really, really not stable long term, because emotion goes away very quickly. And especially once the sale is over and reality hits, it's really hard to build a long term relationship with someone that you've used this technique on to sell them a home. Now, it is an old school training method, and I think it does work. The problem is it's very transactional. And when I say transactional, those are the type of agents that look to have quick sales, burn through the client, find a new client. It's really hard to get referral business and repeat business when you're looking at transactional selling within the real estate industry. And one thing with transactional selling, it really relies on urgency, excitement, and a really quick close to try to move things along. It's built for speed, but not for trust. And like I said before, the reason this falls so short is because emotion is very unstable. Now, one thing that I want to talk about today is what I think is much better, and that's what I would call a consultative approach to real estate selling. And basically, the goal here is not to steer your client towards a specific outcome that you want, but to guide them to an outcome that really fits them the best. So I use the pen example. We've all seen like the Grant Cardones of the world use like sell me this pen. It's very transactional selling, because what you're doing is the agent is basically using what they want you to buy the pen. They're framing everything to make it sound like this pen is the best option for you. That's transactional. Consultative selling is if I have 3 pens here, I'm going to show you all 3 pens, and then we're going to work together to decide which pen actually fits you best for the best result for what you need, not only now, but later. So now the question is, if we're going for a more consultative approach, how do we actually get new agents to understand this? And I think the first step is we have to train agents to spot when clients are getting very emotional and that logical side of their brain is turning off. So we need to train them to think about language shifts. When clients start using words like love, hate, must have, showing a lot of emotion without any practical reasoning, that's a clue to the agent that the client has now turned off that logical side of their brain, and they're really focusing on their emotion. Now, the other part of this is we need to teach agents how to guide our clients back to that logical side of the brain. And that doesn't mean you lecture them or overload them. The easiest way to do that is to ask them questions that reconnect logic back to the goals that they want. And here's an example. If you're working with a buyer and they're getting very emotional, you'd say something like, do you want me to run monthly payments side by side so that you can see where you're at comparing these 2 homes? Because what's going to happen is you're forcing them to first answer a question, but it's also tying it back to their budget and their monthly payment. And what's going to happen is the logical side of their brain is going to start to override the emotional side of their brain, so they can get back to making logical decisions and not making emotional ones. Now, you can do the same thing with a seller when you're talking about, offers or price cuts or all those type of things. And you can just say, hey, do you want me to show you similar homes over the last 60 days where they sold and all those type of things? Once again, you're forcing the seller to engage that logical side of the brain. The one thing that we know is if that logical side of the brain is engaged, it's going to start shutting down the emotional side. Now, why is this so good from a long-term impact? Well, first of all, if you can guide a client with their logical side of their brain, it takes out the whole you have to justify it after the fact. there's fewer regrets by clients because they are starting off with a more logical approach to the home buying and selling process. The other thing is clients feel way more respected and not manipulated because you're just giving them the facts and helping them process and guiding them to make the best decision possible for them. So you have a much stronger level of trust. The other thing about this is you get more referrals from it because ultimately, if a client buys a house and then later, even if they don't regret it, but they still have to justify it with logic, they're going to feel like you really didn't do a very good job of guiding them through this process. So it builds your reputation. Now, the ultimate question is, why does this matter? Well, especially right now in this market, it's super uncertain. We have shifting rates, we have prices, we have, all sorts of news articles about doom and gloom, all sorts of crazy stuff going on. So clients right now really are coming into the home buying and selling process with a lot more emotion than they did before. So ultimately, if we can, from the beginning, start transitioning that logical side of the brain, we can really help calm our clients down and really help them and guide them through this process. So at the end of it, there is no justifying. Let's face it, justifying is a very negative word. It means that you probably messed up early on and now you have to justify it. And once again, that's why I don't like this, because we're basically teaching new agents that that's how the sales process should work. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I am all for understanding this process and understanding that, yes, emotions do drive sales. But I also think that instead of teaching people that they need to teach their clients to justify after the fact, we just need to cut that part out and say, hey, emotion is going to play a big role. It's your job as an agent to help guide your clients and engage that logical side of their brain so we don't have to worry about